If you ache for truth, goodness, and beauty, if you're hungry for a Christianity with substance and strength, if you long for a faith that's big and bold and biblical and all about Jesus Christ, if you're inspired by the idea of one church that has spanned 20 centuries, 24 time zones, and 2 hemispheres, enfolding every race, nation, and language, then you're considering Catholicism. Welcome to Considering Catholicism. I'm Greg Smith, your guide to the faith, life, and civilization that is historic Catholic Christianity. About a week ago, I thought it would be nice to play some Christmas music in my car. It's that time of year, and I wanted to get into the mood as I was driving around running errands. But when I tried to find a decent playlist on the satellite radio or the music streaming apps on my phone, well, it didn't go well, which caused me to go on an epic rant about Christmas music to my poor wife. Now, she agreed with me, but quickly got tired of hearing me go on and on about it and told me to stop whining. But I wanted to keep whining. So I called my friends Cory and Ed and I unleashed my rant about Christmas music on them. But instead of telling me to shut up about it already, they joined in. And then all of us thought how nice it would be to share our collective rant with you. So we met up and ranted together. And we recorded it and broke it up into 2 episodes. This is the first part of our conversation. But before I play that for you, I'd like to take a moment to invite you to make Lent 2023 the Lent of a lifetime, by coming with me to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and the apostles. This coming March, I'm leading a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. We'll visit Nazareth and we'll take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee to see where Jesus recruited the apostles and performed miracles and preached the Sermon on the Mount. We'll have Mass where Peter, James, and John witnessed the Transfiguration. We'll go through the Jordan River Valley and stand where Jesus was baptized. We'll visit the Judean wilderness where he was tempted by Satan. We'll visit Bethlehem and the Grotto of the Nativity where he was born. In Jerusalem, we'll actually go into the upper room where he held the Last Supper and appeared after the resurrection. And just before Passion Week, we'll walk where Jesus suffered his passion, from the Garden of Gethsemane to his trial. And we'll pray the Stations of the Cross where they actually happened, up to the rock of Calvary where he was crucified. And we'll see his empty tomb. Now, at that point, you'll have the option of flying home. But some of us will be flying to Turkey for 4 more days, discovering the cities of the New Testament, Ephesus and Colossae and Hierapolis and Sardis and Smyrna. This is where Paul preached and planted churches and to where the epistles of the New Testament were addressed. Now, for the details on prices and accommodations and such, go to consideringcatholicism.com. consideringcatholicism.com. And when you get there, on the top of the first page, you'll see a big Lenten purple banner that says, Holy Land Pilgrimage, March 2023. Join Greg Smith in Israel and Turkey for Lent. Click on that banner, and it will take you to the information and sign-up page on the 206 Tours website. Now, you want to be a part of our group, so make sure that you sign up for the group with my name, Greg Smith, and use the trip code GS110221. Now, I know we have listeners spread all over the United States and in many other countries, and that's no problem. You can work with Liz and their amazing staff to make your arrangements from wherever you live. But time is short. We're leaving on March 20, and that's less than 4 months away. If you have any questions for me, shoot me an email, greg@consideringcatholicism.com. Okay, and now here's Cory, Ed, and I asking, whatever happened to Christmas carols? So I'm here with Ed, the Protestant.
Here I am.
And Cory, the Catholic.
Hello.
And so today is going to be a little bit of a holiday episode, considering Catholicism a holiday episode. And really what is occasioning it is a rant that I went on last week about Christmas carols.
Always entertaining.
Yes. So I got to tell the backstory here to our listeners so it kind of sets up the conversation. So around this time of year, I think, well, it would be nice to listen to some Christmas music, driving in my car, walking the dog, in the house. And so I go to all of these playlists. I go to Spotify and Apple and Amazon or whatever, and I'm looking for Christmas playlist. Okay. And first of all of the Christmas playlists are filled with all this stuff that's not about Christmas, or it's like super secular and whatever. So either you get the Hot Rod Rudolph, or the Mom is Making Out with Santa Claus, or, some kind of thing like that, or Home for the Holidays, or Feliz Navidad or whatever. But I can't find, I'm looking for traditional Christmas carols about the baby Jesus and the wise men.
And the shepherds and the angels.
All that. Right. About the songs about the nativity. Right. And I'm thinking like, well, Oh Holy Night, Oh Little Town of Bethlehem, whatever.
Right.
So I got to go through these playlists and keep sorting, you have to enter these keywords, like religious or Christian or Catholic Christian or traditional Christian. And finally you get a couple of playlists and it has some of those songs, some of those carols. But the thing is it's just the same carols redone 27 times by different artists and different genres.
Sure.
Here's the country western guy, his version of Holy Night, and here's the pop divas version of Holy Night, and here's the Mormon Tabernacles choir singing Holy Night. But you start to go, so where this went for me is I started to go, well, why aren't there more Christmas carols? Because it starts to feel like there's only a dozen songs. So then I went to Google and I started Google lists, and I said list of traditional Christian Christmas carols, variations of that Google search. And all of a sudden, it was like this light bulb goes off. There's not more than 15 or 20 of those songs.
At least well-known ones, yeah.
Yeah, right? So, Ed, you were saying before we started the recorder, we could probably sit here and name 12 or 14 of them, So, O Little Town of Bethlehem, O Holy Night,
Joy to the World,
Hark the Herald Angels Sing, yeah. Right? But the list starts to get real thin real fast, and then you go on Google or whatever, and you find these lists, and it turns out, depending on which list I saw, there's maybe like 18, 20, 22 of them. It starts falling off really fast, and you get into stuff like the Holly and the Ivy and what's that French one? Oh, L'Île Infant or whatever.
Isn't there one called Foom, Foom, Foom?
I don't know.
Yeah, there are some more obscure ones.
Right. There's like your kind of A-listers, the Old Holy Nights and Little Town of Bethlehem and all this kind of stuff. And then it sort of falls off to the kind of a B list, and then it sort of falls off a cliff and becomes super obscure. And the point being is, if you actually make a list of those things, there's not more than 18 to 20. And so this began to prompt my rant, okay? Because almost all of them are at like 100 or more years old. Silent Night.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it began to dawn on me, a question arose, which is, why hasn't anyone written any new Christmas carols like that in the last 100 years? And so I'm defining a Christmas carol as basically a song that has, 4 verses or whatever. It has rhyme and meter. It's in a traditional arrangement, and it's about the nativity.
And I think we would distinguish it from like liturgical music that's meant to be within, the context of the liturgy and other kinds of music. This is like for popular singing, like everybody sings along in a carol. Right.
That's the whole point of the carol, right? We can all walk on. Little children can all carol. We can all sing O Holy Night. We can all sing Hark the Herald Angels Sing. We can all sing Silent Night. Sure, there are, choral pieces and things like that are not that sort of single. But there was one time, at one time in the past, they wrote songs like that were singable about the nativity. Now, here's the exception. Google tells me if I enter, or some of these playlists, and I enter the word contemporary Christian Christmas songs, a whole lot of them come up, but they are, Ed, looking at you, they are praise and worship, evangelical, contemporary praise and worship songs. So it's some like, it's like the wise men came on that starry night. The wise men, and then it's a chorus about the wise men came on that starry, and they just go on for 9 minutes.
And the bridge is, we sing the word starry, starry night about 60 times.
Right. And it just goes on for 9 minutes, and it's boring. And I'm sorry.
Unless the fog machine breaks, and then we can only go about
right.
20.
So I'm sorry, dear listeners. I became Catholic partly to escape contemporary praise and worship music because it's sort of dull and mindless and repetitive. And what I love about those traditional songs, and so that's what we're going to get in here today, is what is it about that traditional Christian music and those carols that they had? They were singable. They were lyrically and theologically rich. They were singable by congregations and people in groups. They had melodies. You could pick them up. Everybody can, recall those things. And it just seems to me that in the last, 100 years, nobody writes this stuff. Now, somebody is going to say, before I throw this to you guys, I know that I'm going to get an email from somebody and say, oh, here's some links to contemporary Christian, theologically rich songs. And it's going to be something like Michael Card or whatever. And I love some of Michael Card's music, but it's like singer-songwriter stuff. And he's written some stuff about the nativity and all that, but it's singer-songwriter. It's like listening to James Taylor sing a song or something. It's not something that all the little children with scarves and things of hot chocolate are going to
go around door to door.
You're going to sing Michael Card songs to people. Right. So what happened? So here's when I'm going to throw this to the audience. It's taking me a big, long setup, and I'm going to throw it to the two of you. Why don't we have any more Christmas carols than the 15 or 20 on that list? And apparently, we haven't written any new ones in 100 years. So I toss it to Ed the Protestant and Cory the Catholic and say, go.
Well, you want to take that first? Or there's a lot of things we could cover.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that the hymn form, is just pretty much passed out of the culture. Okay, it's just not there anymore.
What do you mean by that?
The hymn form would be
the form. The
form would be
song style.
The song style, 4-part harmony, something you can put down on one page of music with the 4 parts written out. So we're talking only about 16 or 20 measures worth of.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Now you're talking like technical music stuff, but for those of us. And for those who are listening, unpack that a little bit. Help us to understand what is it, and I want you to explain what are the essential elements of those old Christmas carols?
Well, they were built on the rules for composing, which are not terribly familiar to me. I didn't take any college classes or anything, but the 4-part harmony has rules for how it's arranged. So 4-part harmony, you'll see in a hymn book, in a hymn arrangement, you'll see the soprano and alto on the top and the tenor and the bass on the bottom. There are four parts, and there are rules for how they move together. Okay. The big rule is no parallel fifths. There you go. That's all I know about. Anyway,
Cory, do you understand anything that he's saying?
Not really.
Okay. So anyway, but there's a form,
which is just evidence for what he's saying.
Right.
But there's a form for it, and even if you don't know those forms, when you hear a well-written hymn in 4-part harmony, it's pleasing. Right?
I know it when I hear it.
Right? Okay. So then the people who did that well, there was a market for it. Right? People were assembling hymn books, and it was, you can't make money selling, 8 hymnals. You have to sell them to the whole country. Okay. You were in publishing, right? You know more about this than me. So you have to, so when the time came that you could sell hymnals all across the country or sell a song to everybody who publishes a hymnal, then there's monetary,
what makes it worth it. Draws out the songwriters, the artists, they work on it. And yeah, you're right.
So that's one thing. Okay.
Right. And just so quick. Okay. So over the last, 40, 50 years, we had the overhead projector followed
Right.
by the slide projector, followed by the whatever digital, because right.
Okay.
And back in the day, to your point, there were hymnals in the pews. So if you had a church where there were 300 seats or 500, 1,000 seats
Right.
in your church, you're buying 500 copies of that book at $14.95 or whatever the
Right.
publisher price was. And now you go, well, once we started going down that path, and I'm old enough to remember when we were putting them on the overhead projector thing, right?
Right.
And so now there's no music to sell. There's no business model
Right.
for that.
Well, this is part of the greater dumbing down of music. So we're not reading notes on a page in church anymore. So the ability to do that has, has dropped way off. Okay, and the songs that we sing now you only get them from the radio. That's the only place you get them. How does,
or, now, of course, whatever the modern radio is, which is Spotify and, blah, 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 YouTube.
Right. But okay. So I go to church at the Protestant church. How does my music director find new songs that people can sing? Well, they have to already know them pretty much.
Right.
Pretty much. I mean, and so the words are going to be up front. So it's got to be super simple so that you can catch it the first time around or the second time around. And nobody's going to be reading any notes. So the motivation to write something like that is kind of gone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I have a couple of thoughts based on what you said, Ed. One is kind of parallel to that, is that we don't really have a culture of popular singing anymore.
Right.
Like you have the old stereotype of people going door to door Christmas caroling, or people just singing in their homes, whether it's hymns or other popular kinds of songs, or people singing in pubs or bars or whatnot. We just don't do that as much anymore culturally, and I think that saps away a lot of the demand for something like a hymn, because we generally just that's not on our radar. It's not something we do for fun or just casually. And the other thing is that even though there are churches that still have hymnals, most Catholic churches do because they don't use projectors, blessedly. Even in that case, the demand for that kind of song has fallen off, except at Christmas time when we pull out
right.
we pull out the tried and true 15 songs or however many it is. And this isn't universal, of course, but for the most part, people are wanting different kinds of songs. They're wanting just things that aren't in that form, as you said.
Right. Well, there's no so every Christmas Eve, my wife's family, we all go to church in town that does a big Christmas program, and it's very good. It's very with a horn section, a big orchestra with violins and a big choir and all that, and everybody playing a horn and everybody singing in the choir. The average age is like 90. You know what I mean? There's hardly any kids in this because it's not cool to play the trumpet. Who wants to play the clarinet anymore? Right?
There are, and so much has become performance based, right? So, my son and his wife last week went to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra, right? Which is this, amazing kind of Christmas concert with, lasers.
Yeah,
and,
I went to it as a teenager.
Yeah, and it's like kind of a modern sort of, Christmas tradition, what Handel's Messiah was to a previous generation, I guess Trans-Siberian Orchestra is. And they were here in town, and my son and his wife, and it was pretty cool. They said, we should have gone with them, and maybe next year we will. But it was, but it's a show.
It's a spectacle.
There's a fog machine and lasers.
Right. It's not participatory.
Right. And it's amazing. But again, it's not participatory. We don't engage. And I hear what both of you are saying is that there was a time when church music or Christian music or hymnody was something that the people engaged in, and they learned to sing, as you said, Cory, in their homes, and Ed, as you said, there were parts, and you had sheet music, and this cultivated a culture of singing these kinds of songs, and not just at Christmas, but all year, right?
Well, and you were talking about people writing these things, and especially, in the age of publishing, that certainly happened. But you go earlier than that, and a lot of it bubbled up from the culture, especially the music came from, what people were singing at the pub or around the fire at home. It wasn't as if some composer came and said, I'm going to write a tune and then write some lyrics to it. Oftentimes it was, we kind of baptize the tune of some,
a Mighty Fortress.
Mighty Fortress was a German drinking song or something, right? But even some of those things, right? I mean, you're right. I mean, some of those old things are tunes that had been around, and people write other lyrics. Like now, every other contemporary church you go to, they're going to do, the Shrek song.
Shrek song.
Oh, the Hallelujah, like the song from it, right? And they just change the lyrics, right. So, I mean, that's been going on, I suppose, for thousands of years, where popular melodies or whatever get, incorporated. But again, I'm going to come back to Ed on this. Help us to understand. Okay, I get the publishing thing, right? So you don't have rooms of writers going, let's crank out hymns, much less hymns about the nativity. They're only going to be used 4 weeks out of the year. Right. So, but we're just not going to write whatever it is that you said. I can't repeat it because I don't understand it all, but 4-part harmonies with 4 verses and, like those kind of classic songs. No one's going to write that because there's no way to get paid for doing it. Right. But people are getting paid, and it's super popular, right? Praise and worship music. Okay. Right. So there's, huge Christian publishing of praise and worship music, artists that, have made, been famous and made a big living doing, and I can go on and find praise and worship music. So here's what I want you to do, because you've lived your whole life in that world. Right. Define for us, for our listeners, what exactly is praise and worship? I mean, define that for us musically. And what is its appeal?
Well, it's got to be super easy to sing. Okay, so it's got to be a verse and a chorus and maybe a bridge. Okay, a bridge being like a 2-line thing or something. Typically repeated, meant to be repeated, meant to learn quickly, and it's got to be easy for. It's got to be easy for really, really amateur players to repeat. Okay, the guitars and the drums and the bass and all that stuff, the combo band instruments, they have to be able to do something with that. So you can't, it's like a cover band. They're like cover bands, okay? And you can. There's a reason why nobody goes into a bar with a cover band and covers Van Halen, is because nobody can play that, right? But if you want to go there and cover something else that's easy, that's what everybody does. And so that's the general direction that this all goes. So modern praise and worship songs have got to be easy. And my experience has been that they've boiled it down to the same 4 chords every time. I know it's inside baseball talk, but the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6 minor chord, that's all I ever see. I get asked to play at my church, and I just tell me what key we're in, and I can tell you which chords we're going to play, and I can probably guess where they're going to come, and so forth and so on. So also the songs have to appeal. They have to appeal to emotion. The theology takes a back seat. Right. The most important thing, I'm telling you, if you're a music director in the Protestant world and you're listening to this, you can write me and we can argue about this, but I'm telling you, if there's no emotion, that's not going to happen 3 weeks in a row. There has to be emotion. It's got to pull people in. And so the easy way to do that is by finding that little thing that tugs at people and then just hammering on it. So what I hear you saying, and again, I don't have the musical knowledge that you do, but I look at it just even lyrically, and having been around that forever. So when I look at some of those, since we're, not just hymns in general, but since we're on the Christmas Carol hymns, how lyrically rich they are, because they have 4 or 5 verses. Right. And there's like incredible little insights in each of the verses. So, one of my favorite lines is in A Little Town in Bethlehem. One of my favorite lines ever is the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Now that is just theologically
rich and imaginative, but that's only just like one line and there's 4 verses of those insights.
Well, yeah, or think about some of the other ones like Hark the Herald, like veiled in flesh the Godhead see, hail incarnate deity, pleased with us, with man to dwell. Like that's a explication of like part of the creed.
Yeah, well, look at O Holy Night. Like, was it like the 3rd verse or something like that? Somewhere in there, it's like the slave is now the brother.
Slave is our brother. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like in one song that takes you, 4 or 5 minutes to sing, there's 4 or 5 verses, and each of those verses is full of like all of these theological ideas. And it strikes me, again, I'm not a musician, but having been around that world for so long, as a pastor or whatever, it struck me that what you typically have in praise and worship is you pick one idea.
Right.
So if this is going to be like the slave is a brother, thing, that's it. Like you hand that to the songwriter and go, write me a thing built around the one line, which is one theological insight. The slave is a brother, and then it's like the slave is. You could do it, but the slave is a brother. The slave is a brother, and then you would in a bridge, and it's like 3 verses to just unpack the one thought. Right. And so if they do 3 or 4 praise and worship, a praise and worship set of 4 songs, you get like 4 ideas in 20 something minutes. Whereas the traditional hymn has, 4 or 5.
It's much denser.
Denser in 4 minutes because each verse is rich. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, the thing is that these.
So it's like an attention span thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like this is, you use the term dumbed down.
Right. The songs are, this is, I have to warn you guys, I'm not very far away from a rant I can't stop. Okay, so let's go easy with me here. But it's getting to be that the songs are all about me. That's what the worship songs are about. They're not about God. Mostly they're about me. And if they are about God, they're about how I feel about God. And if there's theology in there, it's about how that theology affects me. It's always about me. It always comes back to me.
It's interesting you say, I know you have, and I've talked about this before. So, praise and worship song is, I love you, Lord, I love you, Lord, or I praise you, Lord, I praise you, Lord, or you comfort me, Lord, you comfort me, Lord. But you say that I'm always in the lyric. And when I look at the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight, I'm not in that lyric, right?
Well, you are, but with everyone else.
Right. with all the rest of the world, right?
So that has to, in order for that to work, there's got to be an emotional appeal, right? So what happens is that it's a downward spiral. Okay, it's a failure loop that they keep getting into, and pretty soon, if you're going to sell a song on the radio, it's got to be emotional, and it's got to be about the person who is singing it or listening to it. Right? It's got to be about them, and because that's the only way you're going to sell songs. And then the only songs you're going to have on Sunday morning, if you're doing this way, is you have to go to the radio or whatever, or Spotify, and say, well, okay, who are the big artists? Who are the ones everyone's going to listen to? I need to do those songs because those songs, that's a shortcut. I start that song and everybody knows it. My wife listens to contemporary Christian radio, among other things. I never listen to the radio of any kind. I just never, I don't have radio stations programmed in my car, right? So we go to church and I'm playing catch up. I don't know these melodies. I'm pretty quick at this after all these years, but I'll just sing the bass notes so I don't have to try to remember the melody. I'll just hum along the bass notes and try to get in on the chorus. But that's what they have to do. And if you are getting paid a lot of money and you're in front of 2,000 people every weekend or something, or even 300, and you need to put that music together every week, it's got to be something everybody can sing right now. And it's got to be something that the musicians can learn on a Wednesday night rehearsal, because they're not going to read they're not a trumpet player who grew up going through elementary and junior high and high school and learned how to play notes and read music in college. And then you put the music in front of them and they can just play it without, no, you've got to, this is all I've ever done. Right. So so the whole thing just turns into, it just gets, pardon my rant, it just gets dumber and dumber and more farther away from good theology and more toward, I've seen some horrible theology in some of this stuff. So, yeah, and that's, that's where it's going. You guys see that?
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's going to be people listening to this who love praise and worship music. And they're going to tell us that we're all wet, that, there's songs that are all just about Jesus and this and that. But I get where you're coming from, because that's how I feel, and I'm trying to be diplomatic for our listeners. But I just feel like it is exactly that. It's a failure loop. It's a dumbing down. It's a dumbing down in terms of like lyrically the theological content and the nuances and the thought, the insights.
Right.
And then Ed, you again. Neither Cory or I are musicians, so we can't talk about this knowledge. I mean, I listen to this, but it just seems like there's a style. I don't know, you said 4 chords or whatever it is, but there's this style of this praise and worship music that doesn't feel rich. And I've listened to people who are musicologists and are super knowledgeable, and they'll talk about how the old hymn, the music of it is like more sophisticated
harmonically. Yeah, there's way more going on in it.
Yeah, and I can't comment on it like Greg on the technical level, but just from my experience, you talk about praise and worship being emotional. To me, it has always felt forced emotionally, like they're trying to like manipulate my emotion into some kind of overwrought expression. Whereas if you have a good hymn that has a beautiful melody, and you sing lyrics that have deep meaning and are poetically, it's a well-composed lyric, it seems to me that emotions are often going to arise. Like it's not that it's a robotic, unemotional event, but it arises naturally from the beauty of the music and from the literary beauty of the lyric.
I just want to jump on that, because I feel that so much. Like when we sing some of those traditional Christmas songs, Christmas carols, there are moments in them that I genuinely will feel like a tear coming to my eye. When you think like the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight, I mean, that actually just, I feel inspired by that, or I'll feel, there's moments where you go, oh my, this is really poignant. But like you say, now we're supposed to feel this. It just, I don't know.
Well, you can't respond emotionally to those heavy lyrics unless you know something about what they mean. What they mean. I mean, if the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight, if you don't know anything about the story of salvation, well, what does that mean? You got to be.
That's a great point.
Sure.
That you have. Thank you for listening. My name is Greg Smith. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, would you please hit the like and subscribe buttons wherever you get your podcasts? And please share it with others. And if you're curious about the Catholic worldview and faith, the Church and its saints, or Catholic history, culture, and art, then visit consideringcatholicism.com. And email me to let me know what you think. Greg@consideringcatholicism.com.